in-cab pre-trip and brake test this morning, and this is we're going to start out with my seat belt that is not cracked, it is not frayed, it is not torn or spliced, it is securely latched in the latch position, and it is adjusted to persons. From here I have my seat that is secured to my floor by nuts and bolts, which are all present, and I'm also going to make sure that my seat is adjusted to person. From there we're going to go to our gear shift that shifts smoothly through all gears, and it also has a high range and a low range selector that is working properly. From there we have a throttle pedal. This throttle pedal is free of movement, has no unusual noises or binding. My brake pedal is also free of movement with no unusual noises or binding. From there we also have our clutch pedal that is free of unusual noises or binding. Now at this time I have to do a neutral safety start to get my gauges to work properly, so we're going to go to neutral. We're going to check our brakes to make sure they're set for safety, and we are going to start the truck. At this time I will make sure that my headlights are on. My headlight switch, it is in the on position headlight switch. And from there we're going to check our water temperature. As the truck begins to warm, it should come to proper operating level. From there, my oil temperature has risen to proper operating range within a few seconds of starting the truck, and if it had not, then I would need to shut the truck down to keep from causing further damage. From there we have our voltmeter. Our voltmeter should be between 12.5 and 14 volts, and mine is at 13.8 volts, and it is working properly. From there we have our ABS light. Our ABS light came on and went back out within a few seconds of starting the truck or turning the key on, indicating that it is working properly. If it was not, then I would need to get it serviced as soon as possible. From there I have my fuel gauge. My fuel gauge indicates the fuel level in my truck, and it is working properly. I also have a primary and a secondary air pressure that are fully charged between 100 to 125, and they're in the proper operating range. From there we have our emergency flasher that is working properly, and that brings me to my left blinker, my right blinker that are working properly. I also have a high beam and a low beam, and my high beam and low beams are working properly, and I know the high beams are working properly because I have a blue indicator light that tells me it is. From there we have windshield washer fluid that is working properly. I also have windshield wipers that are working properly, and they are secured to my truck. The arms themselves are not bent, they're not broke, they're not cracked, are illegally welded, and they are secured to my windshield wiper blades. My windshield wiper blades at this time, I can tell that they're not cut, they're not cracked, they're not frayed or dry rotted, and they are seated secure to my window. My window, I'm going to start in the top right corner. It is not cracked or broken. I'm going to come across, making sure that it is free of debris or any illegal stickers or anything that would obstruct my view. And I'm going to go back down to the right corner to make sure that it is secured to my truck and it is not leaking. From there we have our defroster. I'm going to turn it over to the defroster side. I'm also going to make sure that it is working in all temperature ranges, and that my speed selector for my fan is also working in all speeds. From there we have our heater. Our heater switch, it goes to the heater side, and then from there I'm going to check it in all temperature ranges to make sure that it is working properly. Also, I am also going to check all speed selectors of my fan to make sure that my fan selector speeds are working properly. We also have our inter-axle differential lock that is in the unlocked position, ready for travel. If it was in the locked position, it would mean that both axles were turning, so it needs to be unlocked. From there, I also have my fifth wheel sliding lock that is in the locked position. If it was not in the locked position, then my fifth wheel would slide freely, and I do not want that to happen. From there, we have our airbag suspension lower and auto. I want it in the auto side to make sure that it is also ready for travel. Okay, from there, I'm going to come over to my steering wheel. My steering wheel is adjusted to person, and it is secure. I have a city horn and an air horn that are working properly. Okay. Also, my steering wheel is a 20-inch steering wheel. I should have no more than 10 degrees of play in this 20-inch steering wheel, which is about 2 inches. So at this time, I'm going to roll down my window. I'm going to look out and I'm going to mark my steering wheel, and I'm going to look for the play on my tires. And with this steering wheel, I'm showing about 1 inch of play, so it's well within regulations. Okay, from there, we're going to go ahead and we're going to relax, and we're going to check our right and left mirrors to make sure that they're not broke, they're not cracked, they are free of moisture, they are secured to my truck, and they are adjusted to person. From there, we're going to go ahead and we're going to shut my truck off, and I'm going to turn my key right back on. With my key being on, at this time I'm going to have to release my brakes, and I will be in neutral, or apply my brakes and be in neutral. So would you like for me to chalk my wheels? Not necessary. Okay, thank you very much. From there, we're going to go ahead and we're going to release our brakes, and this is our static test. With all brakes released, I'm going to wait for the initial drop of my air, and after the initial drop of my air takes place, I want to make sure that I lose no more than 2 psi of air pressure in 1 minute. And I would time that with a stopwatch or a clock or cell phone. Okay, once that initial drop has happened, and it has, I'm at 98 psi. So at this time I will start my static check, making sure that I lose no more than 2 psi in 1 minute on a single vehicle, and no more than 3 psi in 1 minute on a combination vehicle. Okay, time's up, and I have not lost any air pressure on my static test, and it is good. I am at about 80 psi. Now at this time I must do my applied test. When I do my applied test, I will apply my service brake, and I will hold my service brake, and I should lose no more than 4 psi in 1 minute in a combination vehicle, or 3 psi in a single vehicle. Okay, I'm going to check that with my stopwatch. Okay, we're good. I only lost 1 psi in the 1 minute, so I'm at 97 psi, so I'm well within range. Now at this time we're going to do our emergency buzzer test. And what happens is I'm going to bleed my brakes down, and at 60 psi or above, I should have a warning indicator light or a buzzer go off. Now note that only one of these have to work, but I must have one and or the other. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to do nice, gentle brakes bleed down. Okay, at roughly 64 psi, my warning indicator light and buzzer both came on. Now at this time, I must continue to bleed down my brakes to do my valve check. And what we're going to do with our valve check is we're going to bleed our brakes down in between 20 to 45 psi. Both my valves should pop out. So we're going to go ahead and bleed our brakes down. And as I bleed my brakes down, I'm watching my pressure, not going too fast to overdo it. Okay, at 34 psi, both my tractor and trailer valves popped out. So both valves popped out at the same time. Okay, at this time, I need to do another neutral safety start. And what I'm looking for here on my neutral safety start is I'm going to allow my truck to run for a few minutes, and within a couple of minutes it should rise back up to the proper operating range, which is 100 to 125 psi, at which time my air governor should kick out. Okay, now that we've done our air buildup and our governor is kicked out, we're going to do our parking brake test. Now at this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to release my tractor brakes, leaving my trailer brakes set. We're going to put it into first gear, and we're slightly going to pull against our trailer to make sure that it is holding properly, and it is. So now at this time I will release my tractor brakes and apply my trailer brakes. So what we're going to do here is we're going to be checking to make sure that our tractor parking brakes are working properly. I'm going to pull against my parking brakes, and my parking brakes are holding properly. Now at this time I must release both set of brakes, and I'm going to apply pressure to my service brake, and I'm going to pull against my service brake at this time slightly to make sure that my service brakes are holding, and they are holding properly as they should. At this time, that concludes my in-cab pre-trip and brake test.